Hello everyone and welcome to my session for TFFEMEA. My name's Rebecca and I'm going to talk to you about data discovery. So I'm an informatics consultant with Cloudstream Partners. I've been with them for about a year. If you don't know anything about us already, we do quite a lot of Tableau training and consultancy work, and I feel over my time and experience with Cloudstream and previous roles, I've done a lot in data discovery and the journey of how you get to your end reports. So I've put together some key 5 questions with some sub questions to go with them that I think would be a good checklist for when you're going into a new project or a new role or client site that you should probably ask to get a better, clear, concise instructions about your end goal. So let's begin. Data discovery. Now, my tagline would be the change that you want to see. Don't be the reporting factory or taking one number from one place and put it into another place. You want to be the change of analysis. You want to do some deep dive discovery and actually look at the data that you've got in front of you. So you head into a new client or a new sector and you wish to use Tableau, or not even that, you've been assigned a new project at work and they want existing reports built in Tableau and you have no idea where to begin. In a business situation, you might be quite limited to what you can and can't do with your chain above, but with my key questions you can tailor them to your own needs, which might help you. I feel as if this topic is not widely spoken about because you don't always end up showing a pretty graph at the end, but the journey of how the pretty graph got there is actually quite important. So, my first question is, what do you want and why? These questions are what you've been asked to do, and you want to ask yourself or the team above you, why do you want this report? What value does it bring? If I don't do this report, what will happen? Gathering this information might help you to determine what kind of reports you're going to build, and if you have more requests from more than one sub team, then you could look at what kind of questions are being asked. Are more than one team asking the same questions? Can you collect all of this information and build one report rather than building 5 reports and put on a filter for the different sectors? What kind of benefits does this report provide? Is there something in a wider picture that you need to determine to make a bigger report, or is it just little ad hoc requests that people could find out themselves if they had the actual skills and knowledge to use some other reports and do some own analysis? So it's kind of all these type of questions you'd need to ask yourself to begin with. If you can collaborate some reports because the same people are asking the same questions, it would cut down manual intervention, your workload time, which will help you in the long run to use your time a lot more valuably. It's kind of getting out of the chain of being a reporting factory and doing your own discovery. So where does the data come from? This question is exactly what it says. Where does it come from? It's quite an easy question to answer, but sometimes you're not always provided with the information. Normally, when I have been on client sites and I've been asked to produce a report, I always come back with a list of questions that the client sometimes isn't ready to answer, or they don't know they need to ask these questions for the answers that I need. It might be best to have checkpoints throughout your work, perhaps, which will come on a little bit later. But in one of these checkpoints, it will be good to find out where the data is coming from. Is it a huge Excel manipulation? Is it different databases that are connected and you pull in different data from them? Is it data dump downloads that you can't change the cells or the formats? Does the report request want historic data? Do they want previous records? Is this data going to be appended or is this data going to be overwritten? These 2 points are quite important, because if you're going to overwrite the data, then you're going to lose effectively the previous month's data. So when you want to do comparative analysis, you have no comparison to do any between the months. So it's good to find out straight from the start, what do you want? Do you want me to add this to the bottom of the data, or do you want me to overwrite it? Do they want any exclusions in the data, cancelled jobs, null values, the year 2014 because they know they brought in a new system and a lot of the login was incorrect? So these kind of things that you could find and determine from your discovery at the start. So data manipulation is quite a big strain when you don't have the tools like Alteryx to use, or some other tools that are out there. I find many a times when I go on client sites and having a number of Excel spreadsheets and they're wanting it into one Tableau report, your mind kind of explodes a little bit. Recently, I had a client that had one Excel spreadsheet with 18 different tabs, and we had to union all these tabs together in Tableau to get all of this data onto one dashboard where they had a filter of the multiple tabs. So say if it was a sub-client name on each individual tab, that was now a drop-down filter. And the business had a bit of a hallelujah moment. They didn't know this could be done. They thought it was impossible to speed this process up, and it cut down the man time of producing the report. And that was all from figuring out where the data comes from and how we can utilise the data, Excel spreadsheets, and what we can do to turn it around. I was able to solve that problem by using the first two questions. Who wants this report? Why do you want it? And where does it come from? So it's also quite important to find out who will be viewing your reports. Is it the team that you're working with? Is it another team that have asked you and you're in a reporting hub? Or is it high-level exec reports? If it's exec reports, it might be big numbers that you have to produce, and they're not too bothered about the little details, but you might want to have a bit of backup of some further details for when they do ask those questions about peaks and troughs or trends. You've got the evidence and the data prepared already to showcase any questions they have. If you have a summary page or an overview page for your desired audience, finding out who's going to be viewing the reports can help you design your dashboards. As well as if you're showcasing it in meetings, you might want to leave some data out so you can answer questions on the fly and show how quick your analysis can be within Tableau if you need any quick win situations. A lot of stakeholders aren't necessarily interested in the small stuff, but when they see a massive dip in January, they want to know why there's a massive dip in January. You can see if it's a seasonal change, if it's because the system went down, was there a staffing issue, was it Christmas, but you can identify these areas straight away. It's also good when you have your reports viewing and you know who's viewing them, your data security. So if you're having Tableau server, you need to set up your boundaries for each user, what they can and can't see. If you've created one mass report from your first question discovery of who's going to be viewing this, then you can collaborate all those reports. Instead of making 5 individual reports, you're making one. You need to sort out the security to make sure the finance department can't see the sales department figures, and vice versa. So all your questions kind of tie in together. During this process, you'd have your checkpoints as you go along and build your report, so you can see if it's been signed off properly, the access levels, as well as if your template and design are worthy of what's been requested. I think when you find out where you want the reports to be stored, people often forget that, for me personally on a client site, that I'm not going to be coming back. So this is quite an important question for me to find out where they want the data sources stored. Where do they want this report stored? If it's currently on my desktop, where do you want it to be moved to? Is it a shared file? Is it a Tableau server? Is it a Google Drive that the whole team can access? it's always good to know where you're going to be storing it for your handover. You don't necessarily want everybody to be able to access it, you just want the team that you're working with. So you need to nail it down and make sure it's recorded. So if a data connection drops out, they can go directly to the stored place, which makes sense, and reconnect it. This leads nicely on to the next question, who will look after the reports going forward? So during the handover of your report, you've built a fabulous dashboard. You've found out who's going to be reviewing it, where the data is coming from, why they want this report, as well as where you want everything to be stored. Now you need to find out who's going to look after it. When you leave, if you're a consultant like myself, you're going to have a fully fledged handover to that person, so know exactly what's been built, where the calculations are from, where the data sources are from, and anything that you've changed. So you could have changed aliases, you could have had a web of calculations. It's always best to let the person that you're handing it over to know what's going on. It might be wise as well if you get this person to send you an email just to confirm, thanks for the handover of this report, I am competent and happy. That if you're in a permanent role, that could also land you in favour if anything goes wrong in the future and this report isn't being used to its abilities and they turn around and say, I wasn't taught properly, you have the email to fall back on. It's always good as well if they know how to do the maintenance of the report. So when we have upgrades, if a field name changes in the data, you'd need to change it in Tableau or make sure that it's pulled across. Some of your calculations might have dropped out, you get a little red error. There's all these kind of things and questions and thoughts that you need to be having for who's going to be looking after the report going forward. Hopefully, from the 5 questions, you have started to note down and think about your development process for writing reports, and hopefully these questions will help you going forward. Finally, I want to go on about documentation. So the importance of documentation falls back on your previous questions, and I document everything from the absolute word go to all the minor details. I think this is a hugely important step for any report building process when it comes to business related cases. It's an endless exercise and very mundane, but I cannot stress enough how important it is. At a recent client site I was working on, they had nothing documented, didn't know where data sources were coming from, the wrong extracts were connected to the wrong dashboards, and no one knew how any figures got anywhere. It was a little bit of a mess. And I always believe that you can ask 3 different people the same question and you get 3 different figures in return. By documenting this, you kind of stop any confusion and any arguments of whose number is right or wrong. It's all about finding the truth of that number and having some solid, concrete foundations of what is right and what is wrong. If it's documented and the calculations are laid out at the start, then you have no number discrepancies. When you're in a meeting and someone asks you how you got that percentage, you can say, oh, it's X plus Y from the finance data source, for example. I always like to, when people ask how to obtain the figures and you could answer them, sometimes in my work as a consultant I have to over document because I'm leaving, so I won't be around to ask questions. And I mean, I document things from data source placement to filters to aliases, if I've excluded or included any data, why I've connected to those data sources, where I got the downloads from, where the downloads are saved, did I make a master template? All these kind of things and thoughts need to come into play for your documentation. I always prefer to leave a paper trail, basically. So within your 5 questions and your documentation, you'd have a whole host of figures, and my message for the end of the video is really, don't just be a reporting factory or a number cruncher. Be the change in the analysis, be the change in the discovery, and go further with that one step. If you're selling sunglasses and the sunglass sales are really low in December, Why? Is that because it's always cold and it's not sunny? Is it because it's Christmas and nobody cares for sunglasses? You can look at the peaks and troughs and the trends and see what's going on. Ask yourself some questions. Weather, seasonal, did the system go down? Try and use your own discovery abilities that you can and explore the data. Don't be afraid. Just move away from the norm a little bit and experiment. You can find a lot more information out, and you could get extra bonus points from your team members and your line managers. So I hope you enjoyed the chat. I do have a list of all the questions available. You can just contact me or speak to the TFFEMEA guys, and they will get you the list of questions over to you. Thanks for listening, and I hope you all have a great day. Thanks.